Hello. Going to do our clue review from last Thursday's mystery grape and kind of blind tasting focus. It was Zinfandel from the Dry Creek Valley. And we'll talk a little bit about how the clues could have helped steer you towards getting to Zinfandel, at least the grape Zinfandel, and maybe towards, the region as well. So let's go on with the clue review. The first clue was mixed berries. Raspberries, blueberries, and also black cherry compote. And so the raspberries and blueberries were kind of more fresh, and then the black cherry compote. So already you're kind of seeing some different levels of ripeness. Fresh and jammy with that kind of compote. Clue number 2 was blackberries that were on a tree, and they had different levels of ripeness. I really loved that pick. There were some that were still slightly green, some that looked very ripe, and that was a really good pick for the blackberries. So again, different levels of ripeness that you're seeing with the second clue. Clue 3 was fig jam plus vanilla, and there was also fresh figs. So another one, I was really kind of laying hard on this. We have a jammy component, then a more fresh component, because this tells you so much. And I know during the heat of, blind tasting exam, your mind's going blank, you're just trying to jot down notes. As much as you can, if you can kind of slow down and think about what is the nature of this fruit? Is it fresh? Is it jammy? That's a big clues. It's clues not only about the climate, but also can tell you about the nature of the grape, like we have here with this grape Zinfandel. The uneven ripeness of Zinfandel is a big character of it. They have fairly good sized clusters, kind of medium to large sized clusters, and within one cluster you'll have green berries, you'll have, getting there ripe berries, you'll have ripe berries, and then you'll have overripe berries, even raisins. And so that impacts Zinfandel so much, because you can have those different levels of flavor that you're getting with the different natures. Or if a producer doesn't want any of the green or unripe notes, they have to invest a lot into sorting, both sorting in the vineyard and then sorting at the winery to remove those green or even raisiny notes. So that's a really good thing to file in the back of your mind when thinking about Zinfandel, is that kind of nature of uneven ripeness. And there's other grape varieties that impacts too. Maybe not quite as drastically as Zinfandel, but like Sangiovese. That's a big thing in the different quality levels of Sangiovese was sorting with that uneven ripeness. So again, overall, think about the nature of the fruit. If you're writing down your tasting notes and you're getting red fruit, black fruit, blue fruit, okay, maybe there's some things with climate, with cooling influence. If you're getting some green notes and some overripe notes, that's something that's giving you a big clue about the nature of the grape and probably the uneven ripeness or the level of sorting that they did. All right, on to the other clues. Clue number 4, vanilla bean. So fresh bean versus the extract. So kind of hinting towards oak and probably, good quality oak. Clue number 5 was a little bit more complex, but I wanted to give an idea of the potential complexity with this wine. Overall, the clue was briar. And for those that don't know briar, I got this note, Gildsam for Zinfandel, and it kind of made a lot of sense for me. Briar, wild roses is the best way to think of it. It's kind of it's a shrub, earthy, kind of an sweet, earthy note with that. But I love this clue because it had a lot of other notes to it that you could pick up in a really good quality Zinfandel, Old Vine Zin. There was nettles, cloves, black tea, as well as the rose there. And I know this clue sent a few folks off into thinking about Pinot Noir. And I really love that. Even though Pinot didn't match the structure clues that came up in clue 6, a good quality Old Vine Zinfandel can give you some of those Pinot notes, some of those elegant, sweet, earthy, spiced notes on it. Zinfandel gets a really broad brush painted sometimes of being this jammy, fruity style, which there's quite a few Zins like that. I noted in the recap, Lodi can make some excellent premium quality old vines. There's a lot of really good boutique producers, but it's such a large AVA, over 100,000 acres, that you're going to have a lot of producers using fruit from that towards that stereotype jammy style. So it is good to kind of explore areas like Dry Creek, which is a little smaller, and you're more likely to find some of those more premium examples that very well may hit some of your Pinot Noir notes. So I really love that some folks went Pinot there with some of the notes. And then clue 6, I did dill, kind of a classic American oak note, which is associated broadly with American Zinfandel. A lot of producers, though, will use French oak or do a mix. Like Sagacio is one that examiners love. They actually tend to do a mix of American and French. Turley, their juvenile Zin, which is a blend from multiple areas in California, that's often a mix of French and American. But I still wanted to include the dill note because they do feature some that do kind of lean a little bit more towards the American. Like Deloche was one that was American mixed a little bit with Hungarian on it, but that's a Zinfandel that you can kind of get some of that dill and even coconut notes. So that's why I included the dill there for clue 6. Then the structure clues. Medium ruby. Zinfandel by its nature is not a super dark grape, but because it's often blended with varieties like Petite Syrah, it can get a little darker. So that's always something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. You never want to jump too much with clues of color, but you can kind of roughly expect about a medium ruby with a lot of Zins, but know that Petite Syrah can make it a little darker. Medium to pronounced intensity. And intensity is something that I personally struggled with kind of thinking about it in the WSET mindset. Because when I think intensity, I kind of think more like volume. Like I pour the wine in the glass. If I'm smelling the wine while I'm still pouring it, that's a very intense wine to me. Versus a wine I had to stick my nose into the glass, more shy, that's less intense. That's my conception of always was for intensity. With WSET, it's a little different. For them, instead of more volume, it's more like breadth. Like how many different clusters you're getting. If you're getting just one cluster, red fruit, that's not a very intense wine. If you're getting multiple clusters, red fruit, dark fruit, spice notes, earth notes, herbal notes, that's more pronounced. That's higher intensity. That's kind of their way of thinking. So when you're writing, like for me, when I wrote my notes, I always wrote intensity last. Because basically I went through and I picked my notes and I saw how many clusters I had. And that's how I determined if I had pronounced intensity, medium plus, was kind of counting clusters. So that was my approach. Dry to off dry. So this was one of the things I wanted to try to steer folks away from things like Pinot Noir, which is very, very rarely off dry. Zinfandel can be. And we go all the way back to this theme of that uneven ripeness. That you will have some, grapes that are raisins that will have a lot of sugar still in them. And so potentially you could have a wine that is fermented dry. The yeasts have gave up. They are like begged uncle, at 14%, 15%, but still a little bit of sugar left because that's just the nature of the grape. So you could have some off dry styles of Zin. Or they could still taste dry, but you're just focusing a little bit on the tip of your tongue there and you get that little bit of sweetness. Acidity, medium to medium plus acid. The medium plus probably surprised some folks with Zinfandel, but think about in areas like Dry Creek, there are some cooling influences. You do have, coming through that tributary of the Russian River, Dry Creek, coming up from San Pablo Bay as well, you have some access of getting some cool ocean influences to cool it down. Even though it is a warm climate, the temperatures can drop. Then we have medium to medium plus ripe tannins. So overall, warm climate, we're going to have those ripe tannins. Medium to full bodied and medium to high alcohol. Good to outstanding quality and medium to premium price. Mid-price to premium price. Because Zinfandel tends not to be super expensive. It's rare to find a super premium Zinfandel. You can certainly find inexpensive examples. You can find them in Lodi. You can find them under the broader Wines of California designation. Dry Creek, because it is a relatively small AVA, you're not really going to find those really inexpensive styles. Smaller AVA, a little bit more boutique producers there. You're thinking at least that mid-price range is what you're starting with. So those were the context clues to kind of help steer you a little bit more towards Dry Creek if you already were thinking Zinfandel. And so I think I covered all the areas I wanted to cover. So if you have any other questions about picking out Zin and blind tastings, don't hesitate to send a DM. And with that, I will start working on today's Mystery Grape. Have a good one.